I think I was inspired to write The First Day of Spring by a few real-life cases that I was aware of where children have murdered other children. I find that a really fascinating thing to think about in terms of what could possibly make a child do something so awful. And I was also really interested in the fact that, once those children have committed their crimes, they go on living, they don't just stop there. All we know about them is that moment in time when the crime happened, but their lives carry on for years and years afterwards. And I suppose I was interested in exploring what those years look like, and especially what happens if those children grow up and have their own children. What does that relationship feel like? And I think in terms of the thinking I wanted to inspire in my readers, I did want to encourage readers to think in perhaps a less binary way than usual about cases like this, because it's very easy to think there has to be one aggressor and one victim. And actually I think in cases like these that they're very grey, and actually I think it's possible for there to be multiple aggressors and multiple victims. It doesn't have to be a case of we can only feel sorry for this person and we have to feel anger towards this person. So yeah, that kind of flexible and perhaps forgiving style of thinking was what I wanted to encourage. Yeah, it took a long time for me to come up with the title. I always hate naming my books. It's one of my least favourite parts of the process. It always feels like so much pressure to get it right. But I have come to think that this is the right title for this book. And I think that's because it's a sort of incongruous title in some ways, as you say, because it implies something very kind of bright and hopeful, and actually the beginning of the book and the majority of the book is quite dark. But I suppose it's kind of in the same theme as wanting to encourage flexible thinking in the readers. I think there are lots of different ways to look at the same situation. And certainly in Chrissy's story, there is this sort of very dark beginning and she has very dark experiences. But then when she grows into an adult and she has a new identity as Julia, there's actually quite a lot of hope there, especially in her relationship with her own daughter, Molly. And I think, without giving too much away, I think the end of the book, there are some of those more kind of bright and hopeful themes in there. And that's what I suppose I wanted to kind of draw out with that title. It's a really good question. Psychology is what I studied at an undergraduate degree and what I'm studying now. I'm now training to practice as a clinical psychologist, and I work in mental health services, so psychology is kind of my other life in a way. That's what I do for my day job, and it does affect what I write implicitly, I think, because it gives me a very keen interest in the way that people's minds work. I have quite a lot of experience of working with children and adolescents with mental health problems and who experience trauma, and so I suppose I'm very interested in and attuned to the way that traumatic experiences affect children, and the way that they have to struggle to overcome those experiences as adults. So I think psychology has given me a real interest in how people work, and also I like to think it's made me good at depicting those kinds of inner workings of people's minds. So I didn't always think in terms of writing a dual narrative novel. For a long time I thought I would write all of Chrissy's story and then all of Julia's story. And then while I was editing, it was then that I came to sort of put the two together. And I think I always wanted to tell both halves because I was really interested in what Chrissy's perspective was as a child and then how her perspective changed as an adult. And I think having them run alongside each other, I think it's helpful in terms of pace and tension, and I think the two voices complement each other quite well because they are quite different voices in a helpful way. And I also think it's helpful to see something from Chrissy's perspective and then see a similar thing from Julia's perspective and see the way that she has matured and changed. I think that's quite a helpful thing about having the two stories run alongside each other. And in a more overarching way, we get to see the way that Julia's voice is very different from Chrissy's, and we see the way that growing up has really helped her. It's smoothed off some of her sharp edges and made her into a person who's more able to function in the world. And I think that's one of the things that gives us a lot of hope when we read about her relationship with Molly, because we see the way that she has matured and she is now able to be a mother. It's a very big question. I think it's completely right that motherhood and mother-daughter relationships are one of the most prominent themes of the novel. And they're questions that I feel I don't have all the answers to, and I'm not necessarily the person who ought to be giving the answers to those questions because I'm not a mother. I am a daughter, and so I know about my relationship with my mother, but I don't know what it's like to have to parent a young child. And I suppose through writing the book, that was something that I wanted to explore. I wanted to explore maybe some of my anxieties about, what will it be like if I am a mother one day? What challenges will there be? I think the question of what makes a good mother is a huge question, but I do think we see some really good mothering in Julia. She's very self-sacrificing. She always puts Molly first. She cares deeply about Molly's feelings, and she thinks about Molly as an important person. She thinks about her as a genuine person who has thoughts and feelings of her own. And we see that in contrast to Chrissy's mother, who is completely the opposite. She never puts Chrissy first. She doesn't seem to think about Chrissy as a real person. And so I suppose, again, in the same way that I wanted to contrast the voice of Chrissy and Julia, I also wanted to contrast Chrissy's experience of being mothered with Julia's experience of being a mother, and implicitly Molly's experience of being mothered by Julia. I wanted to really draw out those contrasts, again, to illustrate that theme of growth and maturation and overcoming traumatic experiences. I think you've put it very well that Chrissy has an incredibly strong self-protective instinct, and it does triumph over morality in the beginning of the book. And I think that's a very real situation. I think children especially do have very strong self-protective instincts, and especially children who are neglected, they have to develop a very strong self-protective instinct, because otherwise they just wouldn't survive. And what we see in Chrissy is that she is very good at kind of drawing out things from other people and getting what she needs to get from one day to the next. And if she wasn't so good at that, then she would probably die, because there aren't people looking out for her as there should be people looking out for her. In terms of who she's based on, she's certainly inspired by some of the work I've done with young people who have experienced very difficult early life experiences and have sometimes gone on to do really terrible things as a result of that. So there is certainly there are seeds that I've taken from my professional work in psychology. And also, as I said earlier, certain real life cases of children who have committed similar crimes. So she is, in essence, a fictional character, but certainly very much grounded, I hope, in reality and in the reality of children who have gone through similar things. It's another very big question. I hope this book portrays a sort of open stance on redemption. I never wanted it to be a book that either condemned Chrissy or completely forgave her. I wanted it to be a book that was kind of alive to both possibilities, and I think it is possible to be alive to both possibilities, because I think you can feel, on the one hand, the crime was horrendous, probably the most horrendous crime anyone could commit, and it is a total tragedy that it happened. But I think you can also feel deep sympathy for the child who committed the crime, and to think there were reasons why she did what she did. I think what we see in Julia is that she is a very different person to Chrissy, and she does not seem like someone who poses an ongoing threat to the people around her. And I suppose perhaps that's what redemption means, because she is living a redeemed life. A lot of that is through the kind of positive redemptive experiences she has when she's in an institution. So I suppose redemption, for me, I think it's something that is possible, and the mark of redemption is in the way that life is being lived, and it's not necessarily something for other people to grant, it's more something that people have to embody in themselves. It's an interesting question. I have always read a lot, and I read a lot as a child, but being a writer was not something I aspired to. It was not really a goal of mine. And I can't say I can really identify any specific piece of writing that kind of gave me the writing bug, although there are many, many children's books I loved. Being a writer kind of happened to me by accident, because my first piece of work was a memoir I wrote about my experience of eating disorders. That was a very personal piece of work, and it was not necessarily something I wrote with the aim of publication. It was something I wrote more for personal catharsis. And it was through writing that I discovered how much I loved writing. After that I went on to write another non-fiction book. And then writing a novel was something I did because I had enjoyed writing the first two books so much, and because I was really interested to see whether I could write fiction. I was, by then I had some experience of writing non-fiction, but I had no experience of writing fiction, and I suppose it was interesting for me to see whether it was something I was able to do. And once I got started, I found it was something I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed having the kind of freedom of fiction and feeling that there were so many possibilities compared to non-fiction. It felt like with fiction everything was elastic and I could go in any direction I wanted to. That was really exciting for me. I can think of a few writers whose work I really enjoy. I really enjoy Atessa Moshfegh and Curtis Sittenfeld. Those are two authors who I'm reading a lot at the moment and really enjoying their work. I'm not sure I can say that they have influenced me, certainly for The First Day of Spring, because I think I started reading them after I'd written The First Day of Spring. I suppose I was fairly influenced by Emma Donoghue, who famously wrote Room, just because that is a child narrator and The First Day of Spring is in part narrated by a child. Room is a book, it was the first book I'd read where there was a child narrator throughout and it was sustained very well, and I think it was pulled off with very good effect. So I suppose that is a book which you could say inspired me. It's funny because when I was writing The First Day of Spring, I didn't think I was writing a suspense novel. It's only really through the editing and publishing process that I've realised how comfortably it sits in that category. While I was writing The First Day of Spring, I really thought I was writing more kind of psychological fiction or general fiction. And so kind of crime and suspense is not a genre that I think I will probably continue writing in. I think I will probably lean more towards general fiction, and the book I'm working on at the moment is more, I suppose you'd call it more kind of romantic comedy. So I'm probably not continuing in a kind of crime bent, but I'm sort of open to writing anything, and I think that's what's so exciting about fiction, is you can potentially take it in any direction. I'm really, really excited that The First Day of Spring is being published in Taiwan. I hope you enjoy reading it. I will be really interested to know what you take from it. I think it's a book that is open to interpretation and it offers lots of different it offers food for thought in lots of different ways. I'm open to any interpretation of the book, and I think one of the most interesting things about writing a book is seeing the ways that different readers take it and run with it. I'm really excited for you to read it, and I hope you enjoy it.